Hey, Epic. This is Bane here, Bane501, and this is a video response for about the next Souls game, stuff that should be in it and whatnot, like you were asking in your Future of the Souls video. So here's one of the things I thought. Here's a couple things. One of the first things I think that should be in the new game. It's not like a new thing, but I'm just wondering how you think and how others will think that they can make different builds more of a legitimate play style. Because if you look at it, a full int build, like a full mage, it doesn't seem as realistic as a tank because of the magic time it takes for the heavy soul arrow. And I found myself using that a lot early on. I mean, I've had this game since launch, but I remember a lot of times magic seemed kind of useless when you compare it to someone using a great sword or someone using the Darkwood Grain. It just, I'm just wondering how they're going to balance those differences in the new game. And if you have any ideas on that, that'd be great. Like, to keep it where you can run through the game successfully and still efficiently with a skill build or a heavy build. I mean, I'm just wondering how they're going to do that and what your opinion on it is. The next thing that I really hope they do is a more distinctly differentiated weapon system, if that makes sense. I want it to be more where there's a big difference in how a sword plays versus like how a great sword versus a scimitar. They're both swords, yes, but I want there to be feeling more of a substantial difference between them. Because right now it's a sword, like it's slash, blunt, pierce, or etc. But I think if they added maybe more weapon types, like especially more classifications, weapons that are designed to be two-handed, weapons that are designed to be one-handed, and weapons that are designed to be dual-wielded. Like part of a set, you can get the left hand whatever sword and the right hand whatever sword. I just think that would really help affect people's playstyles and add to its replayability, especially when you could feel like there's more of a difference, because I've been trying to do different playthroughs, forcing myself to use a spear, because I never used a spear, and it makes the game fun when you challenge yourself to a different build, but I want to feel like it's not a challenge, but a new experience, if that makes sense. A new way to play the game, and still just as legitimate, like with the builds. Now, here's my big one that I really want to see in the new one. Offline co-op. And, I mean, just being able to sit on the couch and play Dark Souls with your friend and his profile, like if he could, bring his profile over, like, on PSN or Xbox, it's pretty easy to do. And you could sign in as your character and play with your friend. And I know this would help with trading and stuff like that, or be a nice glitch system, so you wouldn't be able to trade a weapon if there's too high of a level difference. I don't know. But just offline co-op, I think that would be a great improvement, especially for the offline community, because like you said, online's not always going to be there. So if it was offline, you could make the game harder, you can make enemies faster, whatever you want to do, but if you made it so that offline had multiplayer or co-op, it would be such a fun experience, because then you could play as a mage, you could have your mage friend and you could have your swordman, and it would just be an amazing experience. So I really think that it would be a great addition, because it could also be optional, which is always one of the good things. But yeah, so I'd like your opinion on that and everything here. Now, one of the things I would really like, because at a certain point the game feels like it's not getting much harder, because you've already gotten accustomed to the difficulty. What I think they could do, which would really up the difficulty in certain areas or in certain instances and fights, is if you added a squad-based or coordinated enemy, where it's not just 5 undead soldiers in a room, but if there was 5 undead soldiers and say a captain, they would move differently and act differently than if they were by themselves. You could have flanking maneuvers where 2 of them would branch off and try and get behind you. That would totally affect the battle. And I think that with different squad, like a squad of different enemies, like a crystal golem meshed with I don't know, the turtles. I call them turtles. The spear and shield undead guys. I think that you could really make interesting squads, but not only just interesting group of enemies to throw at you, but ones that interact with each other in a more challenging way. So they'll interact beneficial to themselves. Like, they won't just attack as if the other enemies aren't there, because that's how they act now. The enemies will fight as if the rest of their allies don't even exist. Except for maybe the Trident guy. I hate him, he's so creepy. But, yeah, except for him, there's basically no cooperation, no buffs. But if you had a captain that would direct the enemies, it would also give you a benefit to changing your tactics, because do you take out the enemies or you take out the captain and make the enemies easier to fight? It's just an idea, but I think it would really change up combat, because if you, maybe in a New Game Plus, they threw in a captain in one of these scenarios that you never would have expected, and the enemies are far more deadly because they now have a leader, someone to follow. I mean, maybe it could be something lesser than a Black Knight, maybe a little lesser than Tarkus, something along those lines, like a lesser Tarkus that's guiding a bunch of soldiers. So it's not like an overwhelming challenge, or no, so it's not overwhelming, but like it's still a wrinkle to the game that would make it more interesting. I just think that'd be really good. Lastly would be just a little more visual polish, because it's hard to add polish to it's hard to add a lot of visual effects to this game, because I found that when you look at other games, especially Kingdoms of Amalur, the swords are completely over the top. And I mean, it's a fun game, but I mean, everything is so over the top. God of War, everything's over the top. Visual effects, the streaks from your sword, everything's completely over the top. But when you play Dark Souls, there's this satisfaction with this simplicity of seeing your sword glow blue. I really wish they had the effect for Artorias' swords. He has like 5 of them now, I think, with the DLC. It's ridiculous. But I wish they had the effect in the boss fight against Sif. That would have been so nice. I wanted it so bad. But I'm not complaining. So yeah, I think it's a fine line, but if they could make more effects, especially like streaks, like with the gold tracer, if they made it blue for Artorias' swords, it would be nice. Especially if they did it to standard weapons, they could make a wide variety of weapons that aren't that different, but just add a little something to it, which would be nice. But again, there is a fine line, because when you find something new, it doesn't have to be over the top to still be like awesome. Because the first time you put shard resin or pine resin on your sword, you felt like a badass. I mean, no arguing, because it looked awesome, because there wasn't over the top stuff in this game. Everything is simple and humbled and down to earth and real and gritty. So when you had these fire coating your sword, you felt like a badass, but it wasn't really a lot. If you look at another game, you probably have your entire body on fire when you have the right sword on your person. But I just think that if you could put in your opinion on all this stuff, what they should do with the visual polish, the coordinated enemies, offline co-op, new weapon classifications and more distinct classification, and then the legitimacy of different builds, having them play out functionally and still effectively in offline and online. Yeah, I think that would be amazing if you could talk about those in your next Future to Souls vid. So yeah, the only other thing I want to talk about, if you're still listening to this video, which I would be thoroughly impressed if you did, since we're now at 10 minutes, which is, I'm so sorry for taking up this much time. One thing I would really like to get out is some lore that I've discovered on my own, and you've like inspired me to find this. But yeah, I found this on my own, and which is what draws me so much love to this game, is that I found out while trying to get every item with one character, I found that I found a big segment of lore that I really just want to clarify with you, because you probably know more about it than I do. So right now I'm just going to Wiki just to clarify with names. But this piece of lore is under the assumption, which I know you don't believe in, that Solaire is the firstborn. It's not essential, but it's a big part of it. So here we go. Okay. Now, so is that Anastasia? Okay. Now here's what I'm thinking. When you are trying to get your miracles, and you go through, and you need to rescue I think there she is, Rhea of Thurland. When you need to rescue her, when you need to rescue Rhea of Thurland in order to get more miracles, right? So I'm playing through, and then I finally rescue her the second time, so she's in the parish. But when she died, she dropped a pendant. And the pendant, its description said that it was, it had the mark of the firstborn son. And it said it was a prized family heirloom that only the firstborns had. I forget the exact description. I can look it up, but I don't want this thing to drag on for 20 minutes. Now, blanking out. So, one of the things I noticed that made no sense to me was, why would she have that on her? I mean, it made no sense. Why would she have the firstborn's emblem on her? And then it kind of hit me. I'm thinking, and she went with a group of guys. She went with the Way of White, and the Way of White is usually affiliated with, indirectly Gwyn, and because he had the Sunlight Spear, as that's the top of the Way of White. So, what I'm thinking is that she and her group of guys from the Way of White. Sorry, back up. I'm really sorry, I'm not good at explaining lore, because there's a lot of pieces in my head to it. Really sorry. Here's the actual lore, split up, put out plainly. My theory is that Rhea was in love with the firstborn son before he was exiled. And I don't know how she had contact with him, because she's in Thurland and he's in Anor Londo. But maybe they're close together. Maybe they're neighbors. Maybe it's actually the name of the city of Anor Londo, and Anor Londo is actually just the higher part. Anyway, my theory is that she was in love with the firstborn. And when the firstborn was exiled the day before or whatever, he gave his pendant to her for her to remember him. So, when he left and was exiled, she followed him with the Way of White guards that would just basically take her anywhere. Because she was a princess, I'm guessing, because she has her own royal guard, and she's part of the Way of White. So I'm guessing she was royalty, so she would be able to communicate with the firstborn. So, when he was exiled, she found out where he was and followed him. Now, when you talk with, what's his name? When you talk with Patches, he asks if you're a cleric. Now, I realize this would be because that he kicked, Rhea into the pit. And if you say no, then he doesn't really bother with you. But if you say yes, he kicked you in the pit. My guess is that cleric equals Way of White equals part of that group. But I'm thinking he met with Solaire before, like, I'm guessing that Solaire would be the firstborn in this case, but I'm guessing that Solaire is the one that she's searching for. She's searching for her love, the firstborn, and the firstborn is Solaire. This is just under the assumption that's who he is. And I'm guessing that Solaire and Patches met beforehand as well, so that Patches figured this out and basically just used that knowledge to trick Rhea into being in the catacombs, because I mean, he's pretty much everywhere, so he could have tricked her into the catacombs, basically just to loot her corpse, and then anyone else who might be part of her group, he'd also want to get rid of. It makes sense. So, yeah, that's the only chunk that I really had, was using the pendant and just what the pendant description was, and that it was on her. I just put that piece of lore together, and I really, really would like it if you could give me your feedback on that. I'd be amazed if you would listen through this far, because it's 16 minutes. I am so sorry, END. I know you have like a lot of stuff that you're going through and going on and whatnot. Congrats with the baby. And yeah, I mean, if you could give me any feedback, comment about it on your next Future of the Souls, it would be it would mean the world to me. So, I mean, I can't thank you enough for listening if you are. But yeah, this is Bane501 signing off, and I will happily see the rest of your videos to come. Alright, see you, Epic.